Today we're going to be working on the element of art form, and we're going to be creating some forms in the paint program Kleki. And a form is essentially the same thing as what you refer to as 3D shapes in math. A form has a length, width, height. So you can measure it in three different directions. So you can measure it across, you can measure it down, and you can measure it back into space. So to get started, I'm going to begin with a new palette or a new canvas in Kleki. And I'm going to start by drawing a simple shape, just a square, and I'm going to choose the square that has no fill. So right now I've got my line width set at 4, and I think that's probably a good width. So I just click and drag, and there's my square. So the next square I'm going to make is going to be right behind it, but overlapping, because we're going to actually connect the corners with a straight line and then erase the parts that are in the middle that we don't need anymore. So let's take a look at our options over here for a straight line. Well, there's a straight line right here. So I'm going to actually line up my little plus sign that's on the screen so that, see how when I go over a dark color, it turns gray. So I'm going to click on it. When it turns gray, that means it's right over both the horizontal and vertical line. I'm going to line it up over here. Now I'm using a mouse. If you're using a touch screen, it might be a little bit tricky process, or it might be easier. I don't know. But you remember that there's a undo button here. If you don't like any of the marks that you made, you can just hit the undo button. And I'll show you there's another way you can edit the last thing you just put on. So if you hit edit, transform, no, that's not it. Oh, it transforms the whole layer. So you would have had to have done that on a new layer. So let's hit the undo button, and I'll add a layer. And let's say I put this line in the wrong place. So I'm going to go to the edit button, transform, and I can move one of these and rotate it a little bit, and then say OK. And now it looks like it's more in the right place. It's a little long, but we can merge those layers and erase part of it. So I'm going to go to layers and hit this one right next to rename, and it's going to merge them all together. So now we only have one layer and everything's on the same layer. So I'm going to go to the brush tool so that I can have an eraser, and just grab that eraser, and I'm going to clean that up a little bit. I'm just going to move my eraser tool right to the spaces that I don't, or the lines that I don't need anymore. So I don't need this, so I can take those out. And if you need to zoom in on this, you can zoom in and make your cleanup a little bit easier. Unfortunately, there's only a round option for the eraser tool. There's not a square option like some paint programs have. So I'm going to just zoom in here and take this part out because I don't need this part either. And you can zoom in by pinching on your screen if you have a touch screen, or I have a mouse with a roller, or you can use these tools here to zoom in. So now I've got this cleaned up, and now it looks a lot like a cube on my screen. So I've started with a flat shape, and I transformed it into a 3D form. So now I want to actually fill in some of these spaces with color. So I want the lightest spot, or the lightest area on here to be the top, and then I'm going to darken it down on the side and then even darker on the front. So there's my version of a cube. But say you want to make a form that is not a rectilinear form. You want to make something that's a little bit more free form. Or let's start with a sphere. So I selected the shape tool again. This time I'm choosing the bottom row, the ellipse with the fill in it. And I'm going to start with a darker color here. So I'm just going to click and drag. And now I have a big dark green circle. It's a flat shape, but we're going to turn it into a form. And the way we're going to do that is I'm going to add another layer. So I hit the Layers tab and hit the plus. Go back to the shape. Click the word shape. Select a different value green. And I'm going to click and drag. And that's not in the right place, but this is the way to edit it. You just click the word edit, transform, and then you can drag it over to the side. So, and then OK. If you don't add a new layer, you're going to drag everything that's on that layer when you hit transform. So this is a little cheaty way to do it. We're on our third layer now. We're going to click and drag our shape. It's not in the right place, but we're going to hit edit, transform, and move it over. We can change the size of it if we want to, and then we say OK. So I'm going to add a few more of these, but they need to be lighter in value. So I don't think I'm going to get 9 of them in here. No, I didn't add a new layer for this one yet, so I got to add a new layer, then add it. And then I'm going to edit, transform, move it over. And if it's not exactly where you want it, you can hit transform again and move it a little bit more. Okay, so you can, well, that's still not where I want it. I want it, it's like outside of the big one there. So I'm going to go to layer 3 now and see if I can move that. And I can move it. So as long as you keep things on a separate layer, let's add another one. As long as you keep things on a separate layer, you can make them, they're editable and you can transform them. But for some reason, I'm not seeing, because layer 5 is below layer 4. That's why I couldn't see it. So I need to just make sure that I'm on layer 5 and put it above layer 4. And that's all right to leave it like that, I think. I'm going to add one more layer, though. And I'm going to bring in another shape, and I'm going to have it be in this kind of color family. So now this is covering up everything, but if I lower down my layers, let's go one more. That's the location that I want it. So I'm going to hit transform and move it over. And that's pretty good. So this still looks like a bunch of circles. I mean, it does look like maybe that we're looking down through a tunnel or something like that. But I want to make the form a lot more smooth. I don't want to have these really big transitions in between here. So I'm going to go back to the brush. I'm going to go to the blend option. Right now, I think 63 is a good size for the blending. I'm going to move up to the top there because this opacity makes it, it brings in this color. Actually, I'll go for a middle value. And blending all the way up to 100. And so I just start moving this around, and it's making it blurry. It's a little bit light. I think I need to darken it down a little bit. So it's blending one row into the next, and I'm losing a little bit. I'm going to turn this opacity completely off and see what happens. It's supposed to work with no opacity, but I don't think it really does. So let me try this sketchy one, because that one worked pretty good before. And that blends it quite a bit, but oh, you know what I forgot to tell you to do? Oh, this will solve a lot of problems. I'm going to undo as many of this as I can. We have to merge our layers. That's why it wasn't working. So we just have to keep hitting merge. Okay. Merge. Okay. So it's merging them back down one at a time. It doesn't do them all at once. So that way, now we can blend everything all together. So that should work a little bit better. We're going to go back to the brush, back to the blender. Blending 1000 or 100, and now we should be getting some. Nope, we're going to have to turn the opacity up to at least 3 to get it to blend. And as you do this, it will begin to make the colors kind of one drifts into the other, and we kind of lose these lines in between each row. So that's the goal here. But it looks like I've got one of these colors. This color looks like it's way too dark to make sense right there. So I think what I'm going to have to do is to actually darken this down here. So I'm going to bring up my opacity, and I'm going to try and darken that down. Or lighten it up. So that blended a lot, but I need to bring in some more darkness, some more very, very dark. And that's blending it very nicely. Alright, and I'm going to turn down the opacity here as we get closer to the top. And I'm going to leave some of it, just a little bit sharp lines there. Not too much, but some sharp lines. So if you just can hear, I'm clicking a lot, because as you click, those are the colors that it blends. So if you don't ever unclick your mouse, you're going to be dragging colors from the bottom all the way up to here. So every time you click, the colors that are in that circle are what you're dragging around. So say for example, I click here and I drag all the way up. It's dragging them all the way from the bottom. So I just need to smooth this out just a little bit more around the outside. And that looks like a pretty good sphere. And like I said, I used a mouse to do this on my computer. And if you have a touch screen, it might be a little bit easier on a touch screen. So I'm going to just touch up just a little bit at the top. It seems like it's a little bit too stark right there. Maybe blend some of this out. All right, so there is my blended sphere and a 3D looking cube that we're calling a form. So make something that is round. It doesn't have to stay round. You could turn it into something else. In fact, the other tutorial is on drawing an apple and using these kind of tools. And we start with an outline and we fill it in and we blend it and model it so that it looks like a form. So that's your task. The very last step, type your name and hit OK. Hit the download, and then you can upload this and attach it to the assignment. Okay? If you need any help, let me know. Have fun drawing.